I still remember that morning as if it were wrapped in glass, fragile, glimmering, and dangerous to touch. The sky outside my kitchen window was pale, still half asleep, and I was stirring my first cup of coffee when my phone buzzed on the counter. It was a simple text from my soon-to-be daughter-in-law, Claire. "We got married yesterday." For a few seconds, my brain refused to register the words. I actually thought she'd meant something else, maybe a joke, or one of those teasing messages she and my son loved to send. But as I stared at the blinking screen, the meaning hit like a splash of cold water. We got married yesterday. No warning, no ceremony, no family, just done. I sank into the kitchen chair, coffee trembling in my hands. My son, Ethan, and Claire had been engaged for 9 months. We'd spent weekends choosing flowers, tasting cakes, even picking out a small vineyard for the ceremony next spring. I'd bought a dress already, navy blue with soft chiffon sleeves, and it was hanging in my closet, waiting for a day that apparently would never come. I dialed Ethan's number with shaking fingers. He didn't answer. Instead, a minute later, my phone pinged again. A photo this time. Ethan and Claire stood in front of a courthouse, hands intertwined, faces flushed with joy. Claire wore a simple white dress, the kind that looked like it had been pulled from a rack that morning. Ethan's tie was crooked. They looked happy. My throat tightened. Happiness shouldn't hurt, but that day, it did. I typed back, "You got married? Yesterday? Without us?" The dots blinked for a long time before her reply appeared. It just felt right. We didn't want to wait anymore. I read that line over and over until the words blurred. Later that morning, my best friend, Nancy, dropped by unannounced. She took one look at my face and said, "Oh no, what happened?" I handed her my phone wordlessly. Nancy let out a low whistle. "Wow, well, that's one way to do it." I wanted to laugh, but all that came out was a hollow sound. I don't understand. Why wouldn't they tell me? Why wouldn't my own son want me there? Nancy, ever the peacemaker, patted my hand. Maybe it was spontaneous. You know kids these days, they do everything fast, but it wasn't just the speed. It was the silence. No call before, no message after, not even a hint that this was coming. I thought about the last time Ethan had come home, just 2 weeks earlier. We'd sat on the porch talking about his job at the marketing firm, about Claire's new position as a nurse. He'd hugged me goodbye, like always. Nothing unusual. No sign of anything brewing beneath the surface. So why now? Why yesterday? That night, I sat in Ethan's old room, the one still full of trophies and childhood memories. The house was too quiet, and the ticking clock on the wall seemed to echo. I scrolled through my phone again, through every photo of Ethan and Claire I had, looking for clues, for something I'd missed. Then I saw one picture I hadn't noticed before. It was from 2 weeks ago. Claire at dinner with me, smiling as she reached for the bread basket. But now, looking closer, I saw how pale she looked, how tired. Her hand rested protectively over her stomach. A small, ridiculous thought formed in my mind. No, that couldn't be it. Could it? The next morning, I decided I couldn't just sit there wondering. I called Ethan again. This time he answered. "Mom," he said, his voice hesitant, almost cautious. "I saw your text," I blurted out. "You got married?" "Just like that?" He sighed. "I was going to tell you. I swear, it just happened fast." "Fast?" I repeated, trying to keep my voice steady. "Ethan, I helped plan your engagement party. You said you wanted me to walk you down the aisle beside Dad's picture because he couldn't be there. Was that all?" My voice broke before I could finish. "Mom, please," he said softly. "It's not what you think." "Then what is it?" He paused for a long time. When he finally spoke, there was something heavy in his voice. "Can we come by tomorrow?" "I think it's better if we explain in person." And just like that, he hung up, That night, sleep wouldn't come. I wandered through the house, the one Ethan grew up in, the one that still smelled faintly of lemon polish and old wood. I ran my fingers over the family photos on the wall, his kindergarten graduation, his high school prom, his college ceremony, where he'd hugged me so tight afterward and whispered, "Couldn't have done it without you, Mom." How could the same boy who once couldn't go a day without calling now marry without even telling me? I knew tomorrow would bring answers, but I wasn't sure I was ready for them. To be continued. The next morning, I woke up before dawn. The house felt unusually still, as if it too were waiting for something. I brewed coffee, set out a plate of blueberry muffins, and tried to keep my hands busy. But every sound, the clink of a spoon, the hum of the refrigerator, seemed too loud, too hollow. They were coming. My son and his new wife. New wife. The words still felt foreign in my mouth. I'd imagined that title coming with confetti and laughter, with me holding Claire's bouquet, smiling as she became part of our family. Not like this, through a text message, after the fact. By 9:30, I saw their car pull up outside. Ethan stepped out first, tall and a little nervous looking. Claire followed, her hand linked with his. When I opened the door, I forced a smile. "Morning." Ethan hesitated before hugging me. It was quick, almost formal. Claire smiled softly, but her eyes looked tired. "It's good to see you, Mrs. Carter." "Mrs. Carter?" I repeated before I could stop myself. "After all these months, you're still calling me that?" Her cheeks flushed. "Sorry." Habit Ethan gave her a small, warning glance, then looked back at me. "Mom, can we sit?" "We want to explain everything." I nodded and led them to the living room. The moment felt fragile, like sitting on ice that could crack at any second. I took my usual spot in the armchair while they sat on the couch, hands still intertwined. Ethan cleared his throat. "Mom, first, I'm sorry. I really am. I know this looks bad, but we didn't mean to hurt you." "Then why?" I asked quietly. "Why would you get married without us? Without your family? Without your friends? You planned this wedding for months, Ethan. You made me part of every decision." Claire's voice was soft but steady. "It wasn't planned, Mrs. Carter. It just happened." I turned to her. "People don't just happen to get married, Claire." She looked down at her lap, and I noticed her fingers fidgeting with her wedding ring. Ethan reached over and covered her hand with his. He exhaled. "Mom, Claire hasn't been feeling well lately." A chill ran through me. "Is she sick?" No, he said quickly. "Not like that. But things have been stressful. Her job at the hospital, the night shifts, the pressure. It's been hard." And then he trailed off, glancing at her again. Claire took a shaky breath. I found out I was pregnant. The world seemed to still. My first reaction wasn't anger. It was a kind of stunned silence, the kind that comes before your emotions catch up to the words you just heard. Pregnant. "So," I said slowly, "you got married because of the baby?" Ethan nodded. "We didn't want people to think it was a rush or a scandal. We figured, it's our life, and we'd rather do it our way." Our way. Something about those two words pierced deeper than I expected. I thought of all the times I'd stayed up late sewing costumes for his school plays, all the nights I'd driven across town just to make sure he was safe. And now, after all those years, I wasn't even part of his way. I leaned back, trying to breathe evenly. "I see," I said. "So that's it then. You two just woke up one morning, went to the courthouse, and decided that was enough?" Claire's eyes shimmered. "It wasn't like that, I promise. We thought about calling you, but what?" My voice cracked. "You thought I'd be angry? You thought I'd be ashamed?" Ethan's jaw tightened. "We thought you'd be disappointed, Mom. You've always had such big plans for me, for us. You wanted a big wedding, a celebration. We didn't want to see that look on your face if we told you we couldn't do it. And why couldn't you? He hesitated, and I noticed Claire's hand tighten around his. Something unspoken passed between them. Finally, she said in a trembling voice, "Because it's not just the baby. There's more to it." The room fell silent. The air seemed heavier, charged with things unsaid. Ethan rubbed his temples. "Mom, I know you want to be part of everything, but we needed to handle this privately first." "Handle what, Ethan?" He looked away. "Just some things with Claire's family." Complicated things. I could feel the frustration bubbling inside me, but beneath it was something else. Worry. "Does this have to do with her parents?" Claire nodded faintly. "My mother hasn't spoken to me in months. She didn't approve of Ethan, said he wasn't from the right background, that I was throwing away my future. I thought she'd come around, but she didn't. So when I found out about the baby, I couldn't bear another fight. We decided to just do it our way." Her voice cracked on the last words. For a moment, I saw the young woman she really was. Not defiant, not scheming, just scared. I softened slightly. "Claire, I would have supported you. You both know that, right?" Ethan's eyes lifted to mine. "I know, Mom." But we were afraid. Afraid that if we told anyone, the whole thing would explode. We just wanted peace. I looked at them. 2 kids, really, sitting there clutching each other's hands, thinking they could protect themselves from life by hiding. And then, despite my anger, I felt something else, understanding. Because once, long ago, I'd been them. When I married Ethan's father, my family had disapproved too. We'd eloped in the rain, just the 2 of us and a minister who smelled of coffee and tobacco. For years, I'd kept that story quiet, ashamed of how it started. But maybe, in some strange way, it had come full circle. Still, something about their story didn't sit right. If it were only about the baby and disapproving parents, why the hesitation in Ethan's eyes? Why the long pauses, the unspoken things between them? There was something else. I could feel it in my bones. When they finally left that afternoon, the house felt emptier than before. They promised to come for dinner next weekend. I hugged Claire before she left, and as I did, I felt her shoulders tremble slightly, as if she were holding back tears. After the door closed, I stood there staring at the quiet street outside. I should have felt relief. They'd told me the truth, at least part of it. But a mother knows when there's more beneath the surface. And as I cleared the untouched muffins from the table, a voice deep inside whispered, "You haven't heard the whole story yet." To be continued. For the next few days, I tried to act normal. I baked, gardened, called my sister back in Ohio. I even forced myself to watch one of those light-hearted Hallmark movies where everyone smiles too much and nothing really hurts. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw Ethan and Claire sitting on my couch, fingers entwined, avoiding my gaze. Something about the way Claire had looked that day, nervous, watchful, like she was guarding something, kept replaying in my mind. It wasn't just the pregnancy. There was something she wasn't saying, something bigger. That Friday, I decided to drop off a small care package at their apartment. A basket of soup, fruit, and ginger tea. Little things I thought Claire might need if she wasn't feeling well. I didn't call ahead. I told myself it was just a surprise visit, a mom thing. But deep down, I think I was hoping to see something, to understand. Their apartment building was quiet when I arrived. The hallways smelled faintly of detergent and fresh paint. I knocked softly on their door. No answer. I waited, then knocked again. After a moment, I heard footsteps inside, and the door opened just a crack. It was Claire. Her eyes widened when she saw me. "Mrs. Carter." "Oh, you didn't say you were coming," I smiled gently. "I know, dear. I just wanted to bring you something, some soup, fruit." I held up the basket. Her smile wavered. "That's so kind." Wasn't expecting anyone behind her. I saw that the apartment looked messy, papers scattered on the coffee table, a few boxes stacked in the corner, like they hadn't really settled in. And then I noticed something odd. On the table, half hidden under a magazine, was a white envelope with a hospital logo on it. Claire quickly moved to cover it. "Please, come in," she said too quickly. I stepped inside. "Thank you. How are you feeling?" She hesitated. "A little tired." "But okay. Morning sickness?" I asked softly. Her lips parted, but before she could answer, Ethan's voice came from down the hall. "Claire, who is it?" "It's your mom," she called out. A few seconds later, Ethan appeared, hair damp, wearing a gray t-shirt and jeans. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Mom!" "You didn't have to come all the way out here." "I know," I said, setting the basket on the counter. "I just wanted to see how you both are doing." He glanced at Claire, and something unspoken passed between them again. I noticed the way his hand lingered on her shoulder. Protective, careful, almost afraid. After a few minutes of small talk, I stood up to leave. "I won't keep you. You two probably need rest." Ethan nodded. "Thanks for stopping by." "It means a lot." Claire walked me to the door. Just as I stepped into the hallway, I touched her arm. "Claire," I said quietly, "if there's anything you want to tell me, anything at all, you can, okay? I'm not here to judge. I'm just worried." Her eyes glistened. For a heartbeat, I thought she might break down. But she blinked rapidly and whispered, "Thank you, Mrs. Carter," before closing the door. That night, I couldn't sleep again. I replayed every moment in my head, the messy apartment, the envelope, the strange tension. By morning, my worry had turned into something heavier. Dread. I couldn't explain it, but every mother knows that feeling, that tug in the chest that says, something's wrong with my child. So, I did something I wasn't proud of. I went back the next afternoon, not to the apartment, but to the hospital listed on that envelope I'd seen. It was the same one where Claire worked. I told myself I just wanted to ask about prenatal programs or see if she was being cared for. But deep down, I wanted answers. I walked up to the front desk, smiled politely, and asked, "Hi, could you tell me if a nurse named Claire Parker works here?" The woman behind the desk nodded. "Yes, she does. But she's currently on medical leave." "Medical leave?" I repeated. "For how long?" The woman frowned slightly. "I'm sorry, I can't share that information." I nodded, thanked her, and left, but my heart was pounding. Medical leave? She'd told me she was still working. What was she hiding? That evening, I called Ethan again. "Sweetheart," I began carefully. "I stopped by Claire's hospital today. I just wanted to drop something off, but they said she's on medical leave." There was a pause on the line, a long one. Then he said, "Mom, I really wish you hadn't done that." My chest tightened. "Ethan, please. I'm worried. Why didn't you tell me she's on leave? Is something wrong with her, or with the baby?" He sighed. "It's complicated. I can't talk about it right now." "Ethan, please, Mom, just trust me. We're handling it." And then, before I could say another word, he hung up. I sat in silence, the phone still pressed to my ear. It wasn't like Ethan to shut me out. He'd always been open, honest, gentle. Something had changed. Something was pulling him away, and I had no idea what it was. I went to bed, but just as I started to drift off, my phone buzzed again. A message from an unknown number. It said, "If you really want to help Claire, stop digging. Some things are better left buried." My heart nearly stopped. I read it 3 times before I could breathe. Who would send that? And why? I sat up in bed, trembling, staring at the glowing screen. I tried calling the number back, but it went straight to voicemail. No name, no voice, nothing. That was the moment I knew. Something much darker was hiding beneath this marriage. Over the next few days, I tried to piece together what little I knew. Claire's estranged family, the secret medical leave, the rushed wedding, the anonymous warning. It didn't make sense. Unless the marriage wasn't just about love. Unless it was about protection. But protection from who? Then one afternoon, Nancy came over again. She brought lemon pie and gossip, like she always did. "You look awful," she said bluntly, handing me a plate. "What's wrong now?" I told her everything. The hospital, the message, the call. Her eyes widened. "That's serious, Evelyn. You think they're in trouble?" "I don't know," I whispered, "but I can feel it." "There's something they're not telling me." Nancy leaned back. "Then you need to be careful. If someone's warning you to back off, maybe there's danger involved." I stared out the window at the golden autumn light spilling across my backyard. Danger. The word echoed in my mind. If Claire was in trouble, if Ethan was in danger, I couldn't just back off. I was his mother, and I was going to find out the truth, no matter what it cost. 3 sleepless nights later, I decided I couldn't take it anymore. I needed answers, not rumors, not polite half-truths. I needed to look my son in the eye and hear the truth from his own mouth. That Saturday afternoon, I got in my car and drove to their apartment again. The autumn wind rattled the trees along Maple Drive, and the sky hung low and gray, like the world itself knew something was about to break. When I reached their building, I noticed a dark SUV parked across the street, its engine idling. I barely paid attention to it at first, until I realized the driver wasn't moving, just sitting there, watching. I squinted but couldn't make out the face. A shiver went down my spine. Maybe Nancy was right. Maybe there really was danger. When Claire opened the door, she looked startled to see me. Her hair was pulled back loosely, and she wore a faded sweatshirt. She looked thinner than before. "Mrs. Carter, I didn't expect—" "I know," I said, forcing a calm smile. "I just needed to talk. To both of you." She hesitated, then stepped aside. "Ethan's home." "Come in." The apartment felt different this time. More cluttered, more lived in. The half-packed boxes were gone, replaced with a few framed photos on the shelves. One from their courthouse wedding, one of Ethan holding Claire's hand on a hiking trail. I noticed the hospital envelope was gone from the table. Ethan came out from the kitchen, drying his hands with a towel. "Mom," he said carefully, "is everything okay?" "No," I said softly. "No, it's not." They exchanged a wary glance. I took a deep breath. "Ethan, I got a message. From an unknown number. It said to stop digging, that some things are better left buried." His face went pale. Claire froze. "What?" he asked, his voice tight. "I don't know who it was from," I continued. "But it came right after I found out Claire's on medical leave. And now there's some stranger sitting in a car outside this building. So you tell me, what's going on?" Ethan rubbed the back of his neck. "Mom, please. No more please, Ethan." My voice rose despite myself. "I've been patient. I've tried to respect your privacy, but I can't sit here pretending everything is fine when it's clearly not." Claire looked like she might cry. "Mrs. Carter, please. You don't understand." "Then help me understand," I said. For a moment, the room filled with silence, the kind that makes your heart pound because you know what's coming next will change everything. Finally, Ethan sat down, head in his hands. "Mom," he said quietly, "what I'm about to tell you, you can't repeat to anyone, not even Nancy." "Promise me," I nodded slowly. He took a deep breath. "Claire isn't just on medical leave. She was forced into it." "Forced?" I echoed. "Why?" Claire's voice trembled. "Because of something that happened at the hospital. Something that put both of us in danger." I leaned forward. "What kind of something?" She swallowed hard. "I saw something I wasn't supposed to see." Her words hung in the air like smoke. She continued, voice shaking. "There's a surgeon at the hospital, Dr. Harold Simons. He's respected, powerful. But a few months ago, I realized he was falsifying patient records, signing off surgeries that never happened, taking payments for treatments that didn't exist. It was a whole ring of insurance fraud. And when I tried to report it, her voice cracked. Ethan reached for her hand. They threatened her, Mom. Told her to keep quiet or they'd destroy her career. Or worse. My heart hammered in my chest. You went to the police? We tried, Ethan said, but the evidence disappeared. Files deleted, cameras wiped. It was like someone was covering everything up from the inside. Claire's eyes filled with tears. Then, one night, I got a message at work. No name, just a note in my locker. It said, "Keep your mouth shut, or next time it won't just be your job you lose." I gasped. My God, Claire. That's when Ethan and I decided to get married, she whispered. We thought it might protect us. If something happened to me, at least he'd have legal rights, access to whatever I knew. We thought being together might make us safer. For a long moment, I couldn't speak. The secret, the rushed wedding, the fear, it all suddenly made sense. You should have told me, I whispered finally. You shouldn't have had to carry that alone. Ethan's eyes were full of guilt. I didn't want to drag you into it. I thought I could protect her, protect you, but whoever these people are, they have reach, Mom. They know everything. That's why you got that message. Before I could respond, there was a sharp knock at the door. We all froze. Ethan got up slowly. Stay here, he murmured to Claire. He opened the door just a few inches. Yeah? A man in a dark jacket stood outside, holding a clipboard. Delivery, he said flatly, for Claire Parker. Ethan frowned. She didn't order anything. It's already paid for, the man said. Need a signature. Something about his tone sent chills down my spine. Ethan hesitated, then shut the door halfway. 1 second. He looked back at Claire. Did you order? The sound of shattering glass cut him off. A small object, a brick wrapped in paper, crashed through the front window, scattering shards across the floor. Claire screamed. Ethan dropped to the ground, pulling her with him. I ducked behind the couch. When I looked up, I saw the paper-wrapped brick lying among the glass. On it, in thick red ink, were the words, "You were warned." The world seemed to narrow into a tunnel. Ethan grabbed his phone, dialing frantically. We're calling the police, he said through clenched teeth. But Claire was shaking uncontrollably, her hand pressed over her stomach. Ethan, the baby. We rushed her to the emergency room. Hours later, I sat in the sterile waiting area, my hands still trembling. Ethan paced back and forth, his face pale. When the doctor finally came out, his expression was serious, but calm. She's stable. The baby's fine for now. Just stress and shock. Relief flooded through me so fast, I nearly cried. But even as the doctor spoke, I saw 2 men standing near the entrance. Suits, serious faces, watching. When I met their eyes, they looked away, pretending to check their phones. It was clear now, whoever Claire had exposed wasn't finished. When Claire woke up, she reached for Ethan's hand. We have to leave, she whispered. They'll come after us again. Leave? I repeated. Where would you go? She looked at me, eyes glassy but resolute. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere they can't find us until the police reopen the case. I've already contacted someone, a federal investigator who believed me before. He said he can protect us, but we have to disappear for a while. Ethan looked torn apart. Mom, I didn't want to tell you because I knew you'd worry. But now you know everything. And we have to go. Go where? I whispered. I can't say, he said. It's safer that way. Tears burned in my eyes. Ethan, I can't lose you too. He hugged me tightly. You won't, I promise. But for now, don't call. Don't post about us. Just trust that we're okay. That night, I drove home alone. The road lights blurred through my tears. I felt hollow, terrified, but proud. My son wasn't hiding from me out of shame. He was protecting the woman he loved. Still, one thing gnawed at me. If they were leaving for protection, why hadn't the police arrived sooner that day? And who, exactly, was the message really meant for? Because when I'd glanced at that brick again before the officers took it, I'd noticed something chilling written on the back. Faint, but unmistakable. You were warned, Evelyn. To be continued. The drive to the city hospital that morning felt endless. The gray skies hung low, pressing down on everything, and the windshield wipers kept time with my heartbeat. Slow, heavy, uneasy. Claire had called the night before, her voice trembling. "Mrs. Carter, I think it's time we told you everything." She didn't sound angry. She didn't sound guilty either. Just tired. The kind of tired that sits in your bones when you've carried too much alone. Ethan had been avoiding my calls all week, and my instincts screamed that something was wrong. So I went. When I reached the hospital, Claire was waiting in the lobby. She looked smaller than I remembered, her cheeks pale, eyes hollowed by sleepless nights. She hugged me tightly, without a word, and then led me upstairs to a quiet room in the maternity ward. Inside, I saw Ethan sitting beside a hospital bed. There was a small bundle in his arms. A baby. My breath caught in my throat. "Mom," he said softly, standing as I entered. "Meet your granddaughter." For a moment, the world went silent. The hum of machines, the chatter of nurses in the hall, everything faded. I stepped closer, and the moment my eyes met that tiny, wrinkled face wrapped in white, something inside me cracked open. She was beautiful, so impossibly small and perfect, like a promise you didn't know you needed. I felt tears sting my eyes. "Oh, Ethan." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Her name's Lila." "Lila," I whispered. "It's perfect." I reached out and touched her soft cheek, and in that instant the anger, confusion, and distance of the past weeks vanished. Nothing else mattered but this new life, this second chance. But as I looked at my son and his wife, I knew there was still something unsaid. Claire sat up slowly, her hands trembling. "There's more you need to know, Mrs. Carter." "Please, sit down." I took the chair beside her bed. She swallowed hard. "We didn't tell you everything about the wedding, or why we did it so suddenly." It wasn't just the baby. Ethan's eyes were glassy. "Mom, Claire's health hasn't been good?" My heart skipped. "Health? But you said she wasn't." "She wasn't before," he said quickly. "But during the first months of the pregnancy, there were complications. She had preeclampsia, high blood pressure, dangerous levels. The doctors told us that if we waited too long to decide, she might not make it." Claire's lip trembled. "We were scared. And I didn't want to be admitted as Miss Summers. I wanted to have our baby as a Carter. It mattered to me, maybe more than it should have. So we went to the courthouse the next day and got married." Her words came out in pieces, each one cutting through the silence like glass. I sat there frozen, my mind racing backward, to every angry thought I'd had, every moment I'd felt betrayed. They hadn't been trying to exclude me. They'd been trying to survive. I reached for her hand. It was cold and weak, but she squeezed back. "Oh, Claire," I whispered, voice breaking. "You should have told me. I would have been there." She gave a small, sad smile. "I know. But I didn't want you to see me like that. I wanted your first memory of me as Ethan's wife to be something good, not hospital lights and fear." I could no longer hold back the tears. They fell freely as Ethan rubbed her shoulder gently, his face pale but proud. The nurse came in to check the monitors, then smiled kindly at me. "She's doing better now. The baby's strong, and Claire's recovering." Recovering. The word tasted like a miracle. I leaned down, brushing a strand of hair from Claire's forehead. You're part of this family now. No more secrets. Whatever happens, you'll never face it alone again." Her eyes shimmered with relief. "Thank you, Mrs. Carter." I smiled through the tears. It's Mom now. That night, when I finally left the hospital, the rain had stopped. The city lights shimmered on the wet pavement, soft and gold like hope itself. I stood outside the main doors and looked back through the window where Ethan sat holding his new daughter, humming quietly. Claire slept beside them, peaceful for the first time in months. And it hit me. Life doesn't always follow the plans we make. Sometimes love writes its own messy, beautiful story, one we can only understand after the storm. As I drove home, I whispered a silent prayer. Thank you for bringing her home safe. Thank you for reminding me what really matters. Epilogue. 3 months later, the house was filled with the sounds of baby giggles and the smell of freshly baked cookies. Claire was stronger, smiling again, moving through the kitchen with a grace that made me proud. Ethan couldn't take his eyes off Lila, who was cooing on a blanket by the window. I watched them from the doorway, my son, his wife, and their daughter, and realized something beautiful. Families aren't built in ceremonies or photographs. They're built in forgiveness, in second chances, and in the quiet courage it takes to love even when you don't understand. I picked up little Lila, cradling her against my shoulder. She gurgled softly, eyes wide with curiosity. "Welcome to the family, sweetheart," I whispered. "You have no idea how much you've already changed us." The first snow of the season came quietly that year. Soft flakes drifted past the window, melting on the sill before they could settle. The world outside looked clean again, as if it had forgiven itself. I stood in the kitchen, stirring a pot of soup, when I heard the faintest giggle from the living room. Claire was sitting on the couch, her hair tied up messily, a soft blanket around her shoulders. Baby Lila was in her lap, clutching a wooden rattle with both tiny hands. Ethan was beside them, laughing as Lila tried to chew on his fingers. It was a picture of peace. Fragile, perfect peace. I leaned against the doorway, just watching them. For the first time in a long time, the house felt alive again. Healing takes time. The weeks after Lila's birth were hard. Claire's recovery was slow. Some days were better than others. There were moments when her strength faltered, when fear crept back into her eyes. But Ethan never left her side. And neither did I. We learned to be gentle with each other, to speak softer, listen longer, forgive faster. Sometimes healing isn't about grand gestures. Sometimes it's just sitting quietly in the same room, sharing coffee in silence, letting the walls come down brick by brick. One evening, about 2 months after Lila came home, Claire and I were in the kitchen together. The air smelled like cinnamon and sugar. I was teaching her my family's pie recipe, something I'd been saving for the right moment. As we worked, she looked up suddenly and said, "You know, I used to be afraid of you." I blinked, surprised. "Afraid? Of me?" She laughed softly. "Not afraid exactly. Just nervous. You always seemed so strong, so sure of yourself. I thought you'd think I wasn't good enough for Ethan." I smiled gently. "Claire, I've been unsure most of my life. I just hide it better now." She looked down, smiling, and brushed a tear away with the back of her flour-covered hand. I wish I'd known that sooner. I reached over and squeezed her hand. We both made mistakes. But maybe we needed to, so we could understand each other. That night, as the pie baked and the smell filled the house, I realized something important. Forgiveness isn't a single moment. It's 1,000 small choices to love anyway. The twist of Grace Spring came early that year. Lila had grown into a chubby, smiling baby who loved to grab my glasses whenever I held her. One afternoon, Ethan brought home an envelope. "Mom, you should see this." It was from Claire's mother. I froze, holding the letter like it might crumble in my hands. Claire stood beside me, nervous but calm. She wrote to us. Said she wanted to make things right inside. The handwriting was shaky, but the words were sincere. I was wrong to judge. I let my fear of losing my daughter blind me to the man she loved. When I heard about the baby, I cried, not because I disapproved, but because I realized how much I'd missed. I'd like to meet you all. If you'll let me. Claire pressed her lips together, tears glistening. I never thought she'd say that. Ethan smiled softly. Maybe everyone deserves one more chance. I looked at both of them and felt something warm bloom in my chest, the same warmth I'd felt when I held Lila for the first time. Invite her, I said simply. The more love this house has, the better. A new beginning. A month later, on a bright Sunday afternoon, Claire's mother, Margaret, came for lunch. She was elegant, quiet, a little stiff at first, but when she held Lila in her arms, something melted. I watched her eyes soften as the baby cooed and smiled. She has your smile, Margaret whispered. Claire reached over and rested her hand on her mother's. She has a little of everyone. That day, the two women, who once couldn't be in the same room without tension, stood side by side, washing dishes, laughing softly about motherhood and mistakes. And I realized something profound. The real wedding didn't happen in that courthouse last year. It happened here, in this kitchen. In laughter shared, hearts mended, and hands joined across the wreckage of pride. Epilogue, a year later. On Lila's first birthday, the whole family gathered in the backyard. Balloons, cake, laughter, the works. Ethan grilled burgers while Claire's mother brought her famous lemon bars. I chased Lila around the grass, pretending to be a monster while she shrieked with delight. At one point, Claire came up beside me and said softly, "You know you're her favorite person." I laughed. "That's just because I spoil her." She smiled. "No, it's because you never gave up on us for a moment." I couldn't speak. I just looked at her, this woman who had once been a stranger, now family, now home. As the sun dipped behind the trees, painting everything gold, I thought back to the day it all began. That message, "We got married yesterday." Back then, those words had felt like betrayal. Now they were just the first line of a story that life doesn't always give us the weddings we expect. But if we're lucky, it gives us something far better, a chance to begin again, to build something real out of the broken pieces. As I held Lila that evening, her tiny hand wrapped around my finger, I whispered, "Thank you for finding your way to us, little one." Because of you, we all learned what love really means. And in that quiet moment, surrounded by my family, by forgiveness, by grace, I finally felt complete.